Warlord Gorak of the Titanus species was currently airborne, and for the life of him, he couldn't understand why. Here was a creature of absolute mass, 400 pounds of dense muscle and chitin, an apex predator from a world where gravity crushed the weak before they could take their first breath. He had 43 consecutive wins in the Grand Arena. He had crushed skulls with a single hand. Yet, as he sailed backward through the recycled air of Outpost Omega-9, watching the ceiling lights blur into streaks, he realized a fundamental truth too late to save his dignity. Physics doesn't care about your reputation. 20 minutes earlier, the situation had been entirely different. Outpost Omega-9 wasn't a battlefield. It was a glorified toll booth in the neutral zone between warring star systems. It smelled of ozone, or stale nutrient paste, and the sweat of 1,000 species waiting in line. It was a place where warriors came to rot in queues, and Mara Kovic was the one making them wait. She sat behind the blast glass of the intake station, a human woman of average height, looking at a data pad with the kind of heavy-lidded boredom that usually implies a soul-crushing lack of caffeine. She wasn't imposing. In fact, compared to the hulking reptilians and cyber-enhanced mercenaries passing through, she looked fragile, soft. When the Iron Comet, Gorak's flagship, painted in the blood of his enemies, screamed into the sector, Gorak demanded priority docking. He didn't ask. Warlords don't ask. Negative, Iron Comet. Mara's voice had come over the comms, flat and metallic. Bay 4 is for medical emergencies only. You're routed to Bay 72. Wait time is 3 hours. I am Warlord Gorak, he had roared back, the vibration rattling his bridge crew's teeth. I do not wait for parking spots. And I'm Senior Officer Kovic, she replied, not even pausing to look up from her screen. And you're currently blocking a medical frigate. Move or be cited for obstruction of administrative protocol. He didn't move. He docked, forcefully. He engaged the magnetic clamps on Bay 4, crushing the pristine docking ring, and marched his personal guard, 4 towering Titanus warriors, straight to the security checkpoint. The station fell silent as they stomped through the atrium. This was the theater of intimidation. Gorak lived for this. He slammed a fist onto Mara's desk, cracking the polymer surface. You, he growled, looming over her. He was 8 feet of scar tissue and rage. And she was sitting down. You dare deny me? Mara sighed. It was a small, tragic sound. She finally looked up, her eyes dark and tired. She didn't reach for a weapon. She reached for a stylus. You're parked in a fire lane, she said, tapping the desk. That's a 500 credit fine, plus damages to the docking ring. Card or biometric scan? Gorak blinked. The sheer audacity caused a momentary neural shock. He leaned in closer, his hot breath fogging the glass partition she had stepped around. I have killed champions, he whispered, the threat vibrating in his chest. I have broken spines louder than your voice. Do not quote laws to me, little meat thing. And I have a headache, Mara said, standing up. She stepped out from behind the desk. She was so small. He thought she was prey. He forgot that humans evolved to chase things until they died. Gorak snorted, a derisive sound, and shoved her. It wasn't an attack, just a dismissal. A way to clear the path. He put his hand on her shoulder and applied force, expecting her to stumble back to crumble. But she didn't move. It was like shoving a pillar of lead. Mara Kovic came from Earth. a world of crushing atmospheric density and punishing gravity that made the Titanus homeworld look like a bouncy castle. Her bone density was off the charts. Her structural integrity was deceptive. She didn't stumble. She stepped in. "Sir," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "you just touched a federal officer." Before Gorak could process that she hadn't budged, Mara dropped her level. She found his center of gravity, which was high, arrogant, and exposed, and clamped onto his wrist. It wasn't magic. It was kinetic redistribution. She used his own downward force against him, pivoting her hips with a snap that sounded like a whip crack. Gorak's feet left the floor. The air rushed past him. 43 wins in the arena, 0 wins against a human filing paperwork. He flew 10 feet. The landing wasn't graceful. He collided with a stack of plasteel shipping crates, the impact echoing like a thunderclap through the silent station. The crates toppled, burying the undefeated warlord in a humiliating avalanche of freeze-dried rations. Silence stretched tight across the room. Mara dusted off her hands, adjusted her uniform, and looked at Gorak's stunned crew. "Bay 72, she said calmly. "Move the ship, or I tow it." The silence in the intake station wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of 100 species holding their breath, waiting to see if the universe would snap back to normal. Gorak erupted from the pile of shipping crates. Freeze-dried rations rained off his armor like confetti. He didn't look injured. He looked apocalyptic. His pride had suffered a structural integrity failure that no amount of welding could fix. "Right of blood," he roared, the sound vibrating the blast glass. "Here, now, to the submission." Mara checked her wrist chrono. "I have a performance review in 20 minutes. "You will bleed," Gorak screamed, spittle flying, "or you will apologize." "Fine," Mara said, unclipping her datapad and tossing it onto the desk. She rolled her neck, a sickening pop that echoed in the quiet room. "Let's do this. But if you bleed on the carpet, that's another fine." The station's training ring was less an arena and more a reinforced circle of steel mesh designed to contain Class 5 aggressors. But the air inside smelled of ozone and unwashed fear. Gorak circled, his movements a blur of terrifying speed. He was a creature of fast-twitch muscle fibers, built for explosive, singular moments of violence. He launched himself. The first strike would have decapitated a standard biped. Mara wasn't there. She didn't block. You don't block a freight train, you step off the tracks. She moved efficiently, conserving every ounce of oxygen, her eyes locked on his center mass. Gorak roared and spun, a whirlwind of claws and kinetic energy. He struck again and again. The air hissed where his talons sliced through it. Mara ducked, weaved, stepped left. She was sweating, sure, but her breathing was rhythmic, steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Gorak, however, was starting to heave. This was the secret of Earth. It wasn't just the gravity. It was the history. On Gorak's world, predators ambushed prey, and the fight ended in seconds. Humans? They were the monsters who walked, and walked, and walked, until the thing they were chasing simply collapsed from exhaustion. Endurance hunting. It was the oldest weapon in her DNA. 3 minutes in, Gorak's strikes were losing their snap. His mouth was open, gasping for the thin station air. His movements, once fluid, were becoming jagged. And then Mara saw it, the mechanical flaw. Every time Gorak prepared for a heavy right hook, his left shoulder dropped 2 inches to counterbalance the weight. A telegraph, a promise. "You, stop moving," Gorak wheezed, lunging forward with a desperate, sloppy backhand. He dropped the shoulder. Mara didn't step away this time. She stepped in. She caught his extending arm, not fighting the force, but guiding it, adding her own momentum to his exhaustion. She slipped behind him, kicked the back of his knee, and drove him face first into the mat. The impact shook the floor. Before Gorak could scramble up, Mara had his arm bent at an angle that geometry strictly forbade. She applied pressure, just enough to strain the joint capsule. "Tap," she whispered, leaning close to his ear, "or I snap it. And the paperwork for a broken arm takes hours." Gorak groaned, the sound of a tectonic plate shifting. He tried to push up. Mara leaned back, using her leverage against his fatigue. The pain was absolute. His massive hand slapped the mat. Once, twice. The betting pools crashed instantly. Across the station, credits vanished from accounts as the footage went viral. And the headline wasn't just about a fight. It was a biology lesson. Earth, high-gravity death world. Danger level, extreme. In the locker room, Gorak sat on a bench, holding an ice pack to his shoulder. He looked smaller. The arrogance had drained out of him, leaving something quieter in its place. Mara walked in, already back in her crisp uniform. She handed him a bottle of water. "You have a tell," she said simply. "Left shoulder? Fix that and you might last 5 minutes next time." Gorak looked at the water, then at her. He didn't growl. He didn't threaten. He took the bottle and bowed his head, a true, deep incline of respect. "I will adjust my training," he rumbled. "Good," she said. "Now move your ship. You're still in the fire lane." 10 minutes later, Mara was back at the desk. The queue had grown longer, but it was suspiciously orderly. No one was shouting, no one was shoving. A massive Thraxian cruiser, the World Eater, pinged the comms. It was 3 times the size of Gorak's ship, bristling with cannons. "Station control," the Thraxian captain barked, his voice deep and gravelly. "Request in priority." "This is Officer Kovic," Mara interrupted, her voice flat. "Get in line, World Eater." There was a pause, a long, terrified silence. The captain had clearly seen the video. "Copy that, officer." The voice came back, suddenly polite. "Proceeding to the back of the queue. Taking standard holding pattern. Have a nice day." Mara smiled, just a little, and picked up her stylus. "Welcome to Omega 9, she whispered.